Morning, Sam.
Battery isn't connected to
Okay.
ESKGOP1FMOCHB.
I can't hear you.
No.
Can you hear me? Oh, there you are.
Well, how are we doing?
Doing great.
How's the auction going?
Auction's doing great.
The Pink Warrior.
That's right. The Pink Warrior is going
You
to.
haven't figured out who I am yet, have you?
I haven't tried. I bet I could figure it out though.
No, you got all the keys. You probably can go in and look at all the
I can't.
credit cards.
Yeah, no, I can't.
I don't think you'd ever figure it out.
No, I'll let you know. Well, sounds like people are booking some hunts. Sam just got another fishing trip booked.
It's good.
Wayne got something booked.
Who does?
Wayne, Sam, Cabot. I just got an appointment booked for Eli Lucas, so I don't know if he's got any hunts booked or what, but it's all starting to come around, I think.
Good.
Yeah.
We scheduled at 11.
Yes, we are. But everybody's on the sheep call, so they'll be funneling over when that starts to wrap up.
Now, to bid on an auction item, do they have to pay the $50 to do that? No.
Mm-mm. That's open to the public. Are you all ready for your seminar here?
Yeah, pretty much. Trying to get the right lighting here. Seems like I'm coming in dark for some reason.
You have your light behind you or in front of you?
I have one in front of me right now. I'll turn the one on and back.
That's better. Except you got this beautiful glow on the top of your head now.
Yeah, I see that. Let me take off this. No, that's still there. Maybe that's for being a halo. I mean, halo, you know, for being so good.
I know. You look like an angel.
Yeah, right. No. Let me go down to my office. I do that. It was good yesterday, right?
I think
It
so,
seemed like it
yeah.
was. Okay, I'm gonna try that. I get tired of being down in my office sometimes.
Yeah. It's been a couple days, a lot of
Yeah.
Zoom calls.
I think this is better now. So, yeah, a little bit brighter. I'll be back in a little bit. How are we doing on the attendance and everything on these Zooms? Are they okay?
Really good. Yeah, really good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we had almost 40 on the sheep one, the last one, and it's been somewhere between 20 and 40 for the last couple days.
That's good. That's good. How's it feel to have it successful? I mean, I think it's going good.
Good.
I mean, you should feel pretty good about it.
I'll feel pretty good when it's all over.
Now, are you going down to Barney's tonight?
Yeah, I'm gonna head over there about noon. Angie's gonna wrap up the last of the meetings and then I'll head over there.
No drinking till 3.
Oh, no drinking till the auction's over. And then watch out.
So what, there's no other auction other than the items that are online, right?
Correct.
Huh, okay. I thought there was something else.
That's it.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. Morning, everybody. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes for people to come on over. We're just wrapping up the sheep seminar. I think most people are still over there on that one, so we should start seeing people coming over pretty quick here.
I just got a text from my friends in Madrid. They got like a foot of snow there.
Oh, really?
Madrid, that's unusual.
Yeah. So people are starting to trickle in. We'll wait a few more minutes to get everybody online here.
Yeah, we just signed off there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've been texting with everybody.
okay.
Thanks. Seemed like that one went well.
It did. Yeah, I'm gonna block my screen so I can do the raffle winner stuff.
Okay. We've still got people coming in, so we'll wait a couple more minutes here.
Hey, Wayne.
Good morning.
Well, it looks like things are slowing down a little bit. We could probably get started.
Okay, this is Wayne. Is Sam or someone going to introduce this off, or are we on our own?
No,
I can-
actually, Thor's gonna do the introductions.
Okay.
Yeah.
very good.
So this is Thor Stacy. I'm like the panel guy this morning. This is the panel discussion on moose hunting in Alaska. We have Wayne Kubat on here. Wayne is a wonderful and a highly experienced moose hunter, and also the innovator of the bull magnet. So the moose calling, a lot of fame, a lot of attention from Wayne here on how to call moose and how to do that here in Alaska. We have Sam Fegis on, Master Guide Sam Fegis, and he has some of the biggest, heaviest moose going anywhere in the world. He's from here in Alaska as well, and he's going to talk about that. And then we have my friend and colleague Joey Clutch on. Joey and I have spent a lot of time together. We've even packed a few moose quarters together. I like to think that I taught him everything he knows about moose hunting. I'm kind of that's the way I see myself. So that's our panel today. Great panel discussion. And with that, I don't know if Wayne or Sam's going to start off here, but I assume one of the senior guys, the experts, is going to lead the discussion. So with that, take it away, guys.
Yeah, I guess this is Wayne Kubat. I guess I'm going to start off here. So good morning and maybe good afternoon, depending on where you are watching from. I'm Wayne Kubat. I moved to Alaska in 1976 and have been living in the Matsu Valley since 1984. I got my assistant guide license, my pilot's license, and my first Piper Cub in 1981. I got my registered guide license in 1986 and started my own business then. About half of my guide business is moose hunting. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, perfect, Wayne.
Okay. So I'm going to stick pretty much to early season moose hunting strategies in this discussion. Mainly because what works pretty good early will almost always work a lot better later in the season. Most general moose seasons in Alaska run during September. Some start in late August and some continue into October and even further. The moose mating cycle starts slowly in late August when bulls start rubbing their new antlers against trees and brush to scrape off the velvet. The peak of the rut, defined as when most of the actual mating takes place, usually occurs during the last couple of weeks of September, and more specifically during the last day or so. And it can vary a little bit from area to area in Alaska. Many, maybe even most moose hunters think that the rut is the best time to hunt and the only time to hunt moose. However, over time, I've developed some pretty good strategies that work well during the early season too. In fact, I think that early and mid-September is sometimes better than late September because there are fewer cows in heat and bulls have to travel farther in search of them. Later in September, sometimes the big bulls get their harems, they stay in one spot and the cows come to them. And again, that can vary from area to area in Alaska. We have called many big bulls from 2 to 3 miles and further on or before September 1st by using only brush thrashing sounds. Bulls are mostly curious at this time, but will still travel far to check out future competition. Several years ago, on August 28th, I was flying hunters into camp on a gravel bar in Western Alaska. Opening day was September 1st. Across the river and 3 miles from camp was a big bull raking his velvet against the bushes. Since it was so early, I figured we'd go up and get him. I figured he wouldn't move much. He would stay there. We'd go up and get him opening day, and we'd have 10 days to pack him out. My guys went 300 yards from camp that afternoon with a double-bladed axe, chopped some firewood, came back to camp. That bull was in the exact spot that they chopped wood from 30 minutes from dark that same day. I can tell several similar stories. Just simply brush thrashing sounds will bring them in a long distance anytime from late August on. It's been a very effective technique. When thrashing, the goal is to sound like bulls fighting each other for cows. I like to find a dry spruce tree and snap twigs. I like to break branches 2 to 3 inches in diameter that will give a loud crack. Often, like the story I just told, we'll actually chop a dead tree with a wood-handled axe. The sound will really carry out there. An empty plastic quart oil can with the bottom cut out and the narrow attached to stick makes excellent thrashing sounds. A gallon plastic white bleach container fastened to stick works well too and can also be used for flashing. I'll try to remember to cover a little more on that later. I usually do a 20 to 30 minute thrashing session shortly after sunrise and maybe again about 10:30 or so. I usually do another during mid-afternoon and again an hour or two before dark. When possible, I try to find a lookout location about 100 yards or so from where I do the calling, and then return to my lookout location to watch in between calling routines. Big bulls can hear very well. All that bone on their head draws in sound, much like cupping your hand to your ear. Regardless of how quiet you think you are, they will still hear you and will usually hang up and or try to circle downwind while still several yards out from where you're waiting. But if we are watching from a distance, they often come to the exact spot we called from. This strategy also gives hunters more time to judge an animal and to get more prepared to place a good shot. Most responses to calling, even during the peak of rut, takes a few hours and often a day or two. Early mornings and late evenings are usually best, but we have had very good luck at midday too, and often at high noon. Moose can exactly pinpoint your location and will investigate on their own time schedule. Oftentimes, even during peak rut, bulls will bed before daylight, and they won't investigate until their midday snack and stretch. Story number 2. Early in my career, I had one camp that we usually ran 2 to 3 hunts from. Our standard operating procedure was to get up early in the morning, have breakfast. We get the hunters out to their calling locations, be out there at the first hint of light. We do 20 to 30 minutes of brush rashing and cow calls. We'd move 100 or so yards away and watch. We'd repeat that about 10 o'clock. We'd head back to camp at 11 o'clock for lunch and maybe to take a snooze. And we'd head back out in the afternoon, head out about 3 or 4 for our afternoon hunt. I used to hire a friend of mine who was a school teacher. He'd do one hunt for me every year. Leonard didn't take naps. When the rest of us were sleeping, he would always be out in the stand with his hunter. His clients killed 3 big bulls 3 years in a row, almost at high noon, while the rest of us were sleeping. Since then, we always try to keep somebody on watch every daylight hour, and we've taken a lot of bulls right in the middle of the day. How am I doing time-wise here? Not too bad.
Fine.
A couple tips. If you've done your thrashing and calling and are in your lookout and you hear or see a bull coming, unless darkness is rapidly approaching or there's some other reason that you need to hurry, my recommendation is to stay silent. They're already coming. Don't let them know exactly where you are. Let them keep coming and they'll come to the exact spot you called from. I mentioned flashing earlier. When people confront each other, we often shake our fist or flip each other the bird. The moose version of that is what I call flashing. Bulls beat the crap out of each other and are often seriously injured, sometimes mortally, while competing for female friendship. And sometimes they're competing for more than just friendship. Bulls shake their heads, grunt, and wave their antlers back and forth while approaching other bulls prior to going to battle. If you have to hurry things along for some reason, taking your white bleach bottle on a stick and waving it back and forth, or taking white plastic bags and putting them on your arms or waving in conjunction with bull grunts and cow calls will sometimes help provoke a bull into coming in a little faster and closer. I got one more item here. I can find the page. One final tip, long cow calls. So if you're out hunting and you jump a moose or you spook a bull or you blow a stalk, or if an approaching bull winds you and is leaving, my favorite Hail Mary technique is to do a long drawn out cow call. Waver it and just keep it going as long as you can. More often than not, a fleeing bull will take another look. My last story, several years ago on September 1st, my guide Ben was with a hunter. We were crossing a swamp in the middle of the afternoon, September 1st. I was a couple of 100 feet behind with a video camera. Ben and the hunter crouched down. Ben starts pointing, the hunter's looking, Ben is pointing. This goes on for 5 minutes. Finally, I see movement. The bull runs off. Ben starts cussing. Lots of F and S words, making quite a bit of noise. I did a couple bull grunts. Nothing happened. So I did a long drawn out cow call. That bull turned around, stepped out of the brush in the swamp, and the hunter shot him. Ben couldn't believe it. A week later, he had another client who had flat out missed a broadside shot at 100 yards. Ben did the long cow call. The moose locked on the brakes, turned broadside, and the hunter hit him at 200 yards. A week later, the same thing happened. We all kind of since then have become believers in using that as a last ditch Hail Mary pass when a bull is leaving. And I think with that, Sam is up next and going to give you some judging tips and some other stuff. Thank you.
Very good, Wayne. My name is Sam Fegis, born and raised in Alaska. Pretty much have hunted moose since I was probably about 15. But I've had a lot of experience, seen a lot of different circumstance. People say, how do you judge a trophy moose? Well, a trophy is in the eye of the beholder. It could be a 40-inch moose. It could be a 50-inch moose. It could be his first moose. That's a trophy. But when you want to judge a true trophy bull, there's a lot of things that stick out in my mind. You know, it's kind of natural for me if I go out there and I see a bull and I can tell right away within the first 5 seconds, 10 seconds, if it's a shooter or not, or what we're looking for. The key thing with all guides, they got to communicate with their clients. They got to say, what are you looking for? You know, and they'll say, well, I want a real big moose. I want a 70-inch moose. Do they actually know what a 70-inch moose is? That's what all their friends talk about. I pretty much, I feel out all my hunters first to see which direction, what experience they got, what they're looking for, and then I go from there. In my area, I've been hunting the same area for 40 years. The secret is in managing an area when you're a guide and you have residents hunting there too, is we shoot nothing but 60-inch moose. Every once in a while we'll fall below that, but if you target the 60-inch moose, you always got moose next year. You know, you got smaller ones coming up. What do I look for in a big moose? I look for the length of the mass. You know, I look at the mass of the horns. I look at the length of the palms, the width of the palms. I look at the size of the body. If you have another body of a moose to compare with, you say if you got cows out there and then you got bulls, other bulls, you look at the size of the bull, the trophy bull you're looking at, and see how he compares size-wise with the rest of them. A normal bull, a big mature bull, their chest is anywhere from 32 to 42 inches in depth. That's a key thing that I've always learned over the past is I'll look at the size of the body of the bull and I'll multiply it. If I got 2 times the width of the bull, it's a 60-inch bull or more. You know, if it's wider, you know, it's even better. Another thing is the ears. They're anywhere from 16 to 20 inches old. When they're stretched out between palm to palm, they're between 16 to 20 inches. I multiply that by 3 all the time. If I can get 3 widths of the ears, you know, I got a 60-inch moose or better. When a moose comes in, you know, a big bull, when they come in walking, they act like they're big. You know, they'll come in and they'll just sway back and forth. And that's what you look for, you know, in a big bull. The mass and the heaviness of the horns is very important also. The points, you can have a 60-inch moose palm-wise, but if you got points that are sticking out there another 5-6 inches in each side, you know, it even makes it even bigger, you know. In my area, we have a lot of non-typical moose. We have a lot of moose that are double palmed on one side. Our fronts aren't real spectacular like they are in the Arctic or other parts of Alaska. Once in a while we have palmated fronts, but we'll have clusters of points coming out ours. You know, you might have 3 to 4 or 5 points as the brow tines. Like in our area, for example, it's 50-inch minimum or 3 or more brow tines on one side. That's what you got. You're going to shoot a moose that's smaller than 50, but it's got to have 3 or more points. Let's see, what else do I look for? Another key thing when you're looking for a trophy moose and you got all the right criteria that you're looking for is the sagginess of the horns. When the moose bosses, from the bosses to the palms are starting to sag, you got a mature moose. And generally, you know, all this stuff accumulated together, the length of the palms, the width of the palms, the points, the massiveness is criteria for a big trophy moose. That's pretty much what I look for. You know, for me, it comes instinct wise, and I'm very careful, like with my guides that I put out there before they're in charge of a hunt, that they have tons of experience with a guide that I trust or myself out on a hunt, that they're capable of judging a good moose, because that's the last thing I want is a short moose. Anything got to add to that, Wayne? You're the expert.
a couple things. One of the, when you're not used to looking at moose, a moose looks big to start with. And if you're looking through it at 10 power binoculars, it really looks big. So I encourage people to just kind of take their binoculars away from their face and look at it with their naked eye. What I've found fools you the most is when they don't have the length of beam coming out from the head. I've seen some moose with pretty nice palms, but they cup forward. They got short beams coming out of the head and they go straight up or they go straight forward. And those are dangerous. And when you don't have brow tines, 3 brow tines, that's what our area has too. We give ourselves 10 inches extra. We're not looking for 50-inch moose. We're looking for 60.
Yeah, I should probably expand a little bit on the ears. When they're 16 to 20 inches, I forgot to mention that that's what I like to see is the tips of the ears touching the palms, not overlapping them, but touching the palms. When the ears fit inside the palm width and they don't touch them, you got chances you're going to have a great moose. Along with the heaviness, the length of the palms, the width of the palms. I mean, some of the palms I've seen are, 20 plus inches wide, and that's what you look for. The real wide, the wide moose, the length of the palms. I've seen moose that have double palms on one side and real short on the other, So it has all the criteria, but one side is real short. So your Europeans seem to like the ones that are distorted like that the most. But anyway, I've even had moose that look like elk. Have you ever seen that, Wayne?
Yes, and seen one with double brows. Yes, split palms.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I've had actually moose that have beams that look like elk.
I've seen them with one side that way and the other side like a normal moose.
Right.
I saw one like that this fall.
Joey, I think you're up next.
All right. Well, my name's Joey Clutch. I grew up in the guiding profession and been doing it for 17 years now, I think, guiding. I guide my moose on the Alaska Peninsula, and that's where all my moose experience comes from. I'm going to talk a little bit about meat care, which in my mind is the most important aspect of moose hunting. My family and I eat a lot of moose meat, as do the guides that work with me. So having premium moose meat is super important to us, and it's just good ethics and respectful to the animal. The keys to getting good quality moose meat is keeping it cool, dry, away from flies, keeping it clean, whether it be dirt, mud, guts from the animal, and keeping it away from bears and other scavengers, which we get a lot of that on the peninsula here where there's a lot of bears. And then, of course, getting the meat out of the field and to the freezer or a meat shed where it can be hung and aged and distributed to locals who want it or packed for you to take home. Now, getting the meat out of the field requires you to shoot the moose in the right spot. And by right spot, it's got to be picked up by an airplane or a boat or a raft or a pack animal or whatever else you may be using to remove it from the field in the fastest manner possible. In order to get a moose to the right spot, you got to utilize calling. I really can't emphasize that enough. Wayne talked a lot about that, but you got to make the moose come to you. It really works. You don't want to go after a moose that's like 3 miles away when you can call it to the glassing hill and shoot the moose where you want it to die. In the last 5 years, I don't think I've had to pack a moose more than 500 yards because I've always been able to call the moose and have the hunter harvest them in a place where, I can get a raft to, or we can land an airplane. So if you're patient and utilize that call, you can usually bring that bull in to a nice spot where you can work him and get him out of the field really quick. And it also saves your back too. You don't want to have to do a three-day pack out, which I've done plenty of that in my time. Call it the Bataan Death March, where you're just killing yourself packing out those moose quarters, and it's not much fun. So as I've gotten older and done this a while, I've learned to make it easier on myself. It's also critical to have proper shot placement, as with all animals. I like clients to shoot the moose behind the shoulders, not in the shoulder, which is going to cause a lot of, bloodshot meat and waste a lot of meat, which isn't necessary. When you can just shoot it through the ribs and get a nice clean kill and not waste any meat. When I butcher a moose, I like to have a couple good sharp Victorinox knives, a good bone saw. I like the Wyoming saw to remove the ribs and cut the skull. I use a Barney's pack, which in my mind is the ideal pack for hauling meat out. It's big enough to get the biggest hindquarters out. I always have plenty of game bags handy. I like the tag game bags because they're reusable, but basically any game bag will work. I also carry a tarp with me to put the meat on to cool as I'm butchering the meat and taking apart the carcass. Contractor trash bags are nice to line your pack so it doesn't get bloody, and also to keep the game bags dry if you have a wet raft ride or something like that. I use rafts in one of my areas, so there's always a lot of water, and it's really important to keep that meat as dry as possible to keep it from spoiling. So those rubber contractor bags are nice. You don't want to leave the meat in there for very long though, because it'll spoil in those rubber bags. The meat's got to be able to breathe. So when you're cutting up a moose, all the edible meat needs to be salvaged, which includes front and hind quarters down to the near hock, ribs and brisket, backstrap, tenderloins, neck and throat meat, and the evidence of sex needs to be left attached to the hind quarter. And I also like to take the tongue and heart, because heart's really good, and so is tongue if you know how to cook it right. And it's really important to remember that all the meat needs to be packed out before the antlers and hide. The way we do it, we like to leave all our quarters and ribs bone in. Makes for a lot better finished product. I strongly recommend that people at the very least, leave the quarters bone in. It also makes it easier to identify when it's hanging in a meat shed or in a freezer or whatever. Generally doing a moose, you're going for a shoulder mount, so caping's pretty straightforward, but I have done 2 life-size moose, which that was a nightmare. I did that on the same hunt with a father and son that were hunting together, and they wanted to get the moose mounted fighting, which I don't know. It took some thinking on how to figure out how to pack those hides out, but me and the guy that I was with, we got it done, and I can't say I'd ever do that again. Anyway, once you cape the moose and get the meat off the carcass, not much is left other than a pile of guts and a backbone, and then comes the packing. As I said, I like the Barney's pack, and I strongly suggest that that's what you use on a moose hunt. I also use 5-foot long plastic sleds now that I just started using those a couple years ago. They're made by Northern Sled Works in Fairbanks, and they only weigh a pound or a couple pounds, and you can fit a whole hind quarter in one of those, along with a neck or a rack of ribs, and basically significantly more than you could put on your back, and you can tow those chunks of meat out a lot easier than you can putting it on your back a lot of the times, especially if it's swampy terrain. That sled goes along that wet ground really slick, which is pretty nice, and no strain on your back. So in one of the areas I hunt, I use an 18-foot Chugach Mountain Sports inflatable cabote with little outboard, which those work exceptionally well for packing out moose down creeks too, to get to a lake where you can get them in a float plane and pick the moose meat up. Another good trick is to have a packable bear fence with you. If you're bear hunting if you're moose hunting in a area with a lot of bears, those bears are going to be on that moose kill quick. And if you can't get that moose meat out, within the first day of killing it, there's going to be a pretty good chance you're going to get a bear on it. So surround that meat with a bear fence. You have a much better chance of protecting the meat from bears and other predators. And you hear a lot of stories about guys, losing half a moose to a bear, which is just a shame and completely preventable if you use those fences. because sometimes you just can't get them out the same day you kill them or the next day even because weather or they're farther out or so. Of course, we as guides don't really expect clients to pack out most of the meat, but it's always nice if you can help a little bit, and you should at least know the process involved. It's also important for clients to talk to outfitters about, you know, what meat you're going to take home. I know myself and other outfitters, some other outfitters, just we can't ship meat to you. It's so you should know what to expect in that regard. I always like to remind my hunters too that we really appreciate the moose meat that we get from your animals. It's really a big deal for us and our families, as well as the guides that work for us. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to anybody who has any questions.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Sam Fegis. Very good, Joey. Good presentation. One thing I'd like to add to it is, you know, it's real important that, like with my guides and myself, no matter what time you shoot the moose, if it's especially late at night, to make sure you got it quartered up, meat put aside from the trophy, the gut pile. And I don't care how dark it is, you know, all my guides carry lamps and everything, but
Yeah,
emphasize how strong, how important it is to get that moose taken care of that night, because 80% chance you're going to have problems with bears by morning, you know, and that's where you,
absolutely. Yeah, if you don't get that moose cut apart that night, I mean it'll spoil if you leave it, you know. Even if you gut it, there's a good chance you're going to have some slippage of the hide or some green meat the next day. So, I mean, if you have to work into the dark to cut that thing up and pull the quarters off and pull it apart, that's what you need to do, because there's just so much heat and blood in those animals that meat goes bad really quick. And we owe it to the animal to take the best care possible of the meat.
yeah, I another note I would say is I think the moose meat in Alaska is probably the highest praised meat there is. You know, like all during the year they were saying, well, why don't you ship some of your moose meat to Anchorage to these foundations? Well, I have enough people in Cordova. The village of Eac takes probably a half of the moose meat I have. They're waiting for it. I have so many families in Cordova that from what I use, my troops use, my help, nothing ever goes to waste. You know, and if the client likes to take it home with them, I have butchers in Cordova that can process it. But one thing I've learned, a note to the guides is, for years I've had a meat shed with fans, and when it comes out of the season, early season, we hang it up there and we try to get it in Cordova right away. But sometimes the weather is bad and it's real moist in the Cordova area, and the meat can go really quick. But one thing I learned in the recent years was start using a dehumidifier I put inside the meat room. It takes all the moisture out of the meat room with the fans. I block off the air coming in, and it puts a crust on it, all the meat in one night. You have to constantly empty the pan, but for guides, it's a great trick. Start using dehumidifier if you have a meat room. It's unbelievable. It keeps the meat twice as long.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Thank you, Joey. Good presentation. You mentioned eating the tongue and heart. You know, I've heard that the kidneys are good too if you cook them right. You just got to boil the piss out of them.
Well, that's if the moose hasn't been drinking.
I think I'll pass on that. Seeing what those bull moose do at that time of year.
I agree with Joey too. The plastic sleds work really well. You can move a lot more meat with a lot less effort, and you can roll them up in a ball and stick them in the baggage of a super cub.
Well, I prefer using about 4 packers, to be honest with you.
Well, if you have the sled, you can use 2 packers and they can do it.
I have too much water. I have too much water in my area. The sleds would sink.
When I started, I didn't get a packer. It was just me.
But I agree with Joey too. I mean, you can call them. You can. Most of our moose are taken within 500 yards too. Sometimes we get guys that are just rambunctious and can't sit and they just got to walk. And so sometimes it's a little further. Lots of the times we hunt bears on moose carcass. And when you kill a moose 100 yards from camp, the bear don't really want to come in. So sometimes we try to go further from camp to kill the moose. So we have bear bait.
Yeah, it's just so important to call those moose. I mean, there's just no reason to work harder than you have to when you can just make the moose come to you. See a lot of people like, no, I didn't see any moose today. Well, were you calling? There's your problem. You need to call. Those moose will come.
One thing
This is just for the panel here, Sam. We got a few questions, a couple questions popping up here. We heard Joey talk about the Barney's pack, but there's a question just generally for the panel. It says, you guys prefer the Barney's pack for packing moose? And then a related question, does anyone use a small axe? And it says what weight and how many trips? So I think that's just what's a dead moose look like as far as trips out of the field. So in a way, if there's some discussion about everyone's selection or preference on packs, and if anyone uses an axe.
This is Feegis. Whenever I knock a moose down, most of the time they're probably within a mile from our base camp, and we got a lot of swamp. Normally, the guide will bring out the back straps the first trip, especially if it's late at night. We always figure 9 trips counting the horns. And do we use axes? No. Everything can be cut with a knife. You know, the ribs can be split with a knife at the right joints. Once you scan out a lot of moose, you know where all the joints are. We keep our moose, like Joey, intact with the bone. The meat lasts longer that way. And you start boning it out, then you have more chance of the meat spoiling quicker.
We do use a small axe sometime, not so much for the meat, but for clearing the brush around where the moose is. So you got a flat area to spread a tarp and work on it. Or the
Hey,
old
and then
too.
I got a question here for you, Wayne, in the panel. It says, I have a question for Mr. Kubat. Do you prefer to hunt moose early or late in the season?
Well, hindsight's 2020. I mean, like I said, I think any time from late August on, if you use the right strategy, can be a very good time. And in hindsight, what'll end up being the best time is when you had the best weather. We've had seasons where the first half of September we would do better than the last half. You know, the general thought to most people is later and better. There's more movement, but I told you sometimes where we hunt, the moose get their harems, they hole up deep, they don't move. And they might be several miles from you. So earlier in the season, there's less cows in the heat and the bulls are searching. So yes, the later season is most in demand. But I can honestly look people in the face and say, we can do a good job from late August on.
Any other thoughts from our panel on early season versus late season moose?
Well, in my area, in Cordova, I've hunted the peninsula also, but in Cordova, it seems like I've shot, my biggest moose was probably the first day of the season. But over the years, my area is real flat, swampy. And in the last 10 years, I've seen moose, since it's grown up a lot, I've seen more bigger moose at the end of the season that I haven't seen during the beginning of the season. So I think what happens, a lot of these moose, they have learned to stay in the brush, deep woods. We have a lot of big trees, swamp trees, everything. They have tendency of living in those trees. And then toward the end of the season, like end of October and that, they'll start coming out. I see bulls, I'm surprised where they come from, you know, because I fly the area all the time, you know, and we go from one area to the other. And all of a sudden I said, wow, where'd that one come from, you know? So yeah, I would say one plus thing about the end of the season, you have no bugs, everything's brown, it's the jungle is pretty much dead. You know, it's like it's perfect hunting weather, you know, other than the rain and the storm.
And which is best sometimes depends on where you are. Some areas of the state moose have migration routes. I have one area where the big bulls would be holding up till about the 25th of August. And then starting then they'd get up and they'd migrate south. And by the middle of September, they'd be 20 miles to the south. So if you have some knowledge of the area, some have migration routes and some are just hang around all year. So it depends a lot on the area too.
That is an important thing, Wayne. You know, for any client that's going to book a moose hunt, it's real important that they get to know the guy they're going to book with, and try to figure out his knowledge. You know, because some of these guides that have been in these areas for a long time know the migration path, know the way the moose move back and forth, and that's real important for success. One thing a guide can't control is the weather. When it floods, storms, winds, they're out of our control. We have pretty much a lot of stuff in our control, but the weather we don't.
Yeah, I always see that the weather is the most important thing on a moose hunt. You know, if you get those hot seasons where it's, you know, in the 60 degrees, it's just bad moose hunting. Those moose lay up and you're just not going to see them. You know, they don't move. And then you get a season, you know, at the same time of year where it's, you know, cool and you frost at night and those moose are moving around, traveling, looking for cows, and just exceptional moose hunting. And you might, you know, everybody like this year, we all tagged out within the first 3 days. So, you know, other years where it's hot, you know, you go down to the wire. So late season, early season, to me, it all just depends on the weather. You want that cool, wet weather, just really good moose hunting. Those moose are moving.
One thing that I can add to that is in my area, for example, when I know there's a change in the weather, all the moose are out the night before. I mean, they are all over the place because they know the weather's changing. A storm's coming.
Great. And I see a question here in the sideboards on, it says for Mr. Fegis, can you clarify on the moose ears being 16 to 20 inches? And I think this is just kind of a moose judging question kind of generally. So maybe the panel can discuss a little bit about, you know, judging antler spread.
Well, the only reason I use that is, you know, over the years, you kind of measure the ears and, you know, and I check with my guides too. The moose ears are on an average of a mature moose, they're 16 to 20 inches when they're spread out, you know, and when they're like touching the tips of the inside the palms. And when you got something like that, if they don't overlap inside the palm, you know, that's a throw off for me, you know, but when they can't touch the tips of the inside the palms, you got a pretty good sized moose, especially pure bull. That's what I meant by that.
And I think what Sam is talking about there is how much a beam comes out of the head. I mean, if you don't have much beam there, the ears are going to touch inside the horn. And even if you got good mass on the antler, he might not have much spread. When you got 6 to 8 inches, couple of fist widths, or if the horns are drooping, the antlers spread out more and will give you more width.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, when you got those ears that overlap the palms, it's just not going to be a wide moose. But when you see those beams and they dip down low like that, and the palms kind of flare out, and those ears just don't even touch the inside of the palms, and it's a wide moose. Pretty confident of it.
Oh, sorry, Joey, but another characteristic I look for too that I didn't mention was maybe you could say something about it, Wayne and Joey, but like our moose, when they get older, the mature moose, they're more of a sandy-ish gray color, you know, the hide in the back, and then a dark brown, like a immature moose. So these are all characteristics that you computerize in your brain, you know, all within 15 to 20 seconds, you know, and you put everything together, and it comes natural to us. But for a person to go out moose hunting themselves, they see a moose. I mean, it's majestic to see a bull up close, and they right away they sometimes think a small moose is a big moose, and the big bull will always look bigger when it's running away. You know, I mean, a moose, when they run away because of the spread of the antlers, it always makes the moose look bigger, you know? So these are all things you got to be careful of.
You pretty much have to get a head-on shot. You can't just do
Yeah.
the side unless you know, that it could just fool you too quick. Another characteristic is, I mean, yeah, some of the really old bulls are a lot lighter color. Some of our good bulls are a lot darker colored than cows. But when a moose gets older, their antlers will waffle quite a bit too. If you see a lot of waffling on the palm, overlapping, non-typical, that's a sign of age, and age oftentimes equates to width.
One thing I like to tell people too when they hunt with me is don't get too caught up on the spread. I mean, it's important to have a wide moose, and everybody wants a, you know, a 60 or 65-inch moose, whatever it is. But, you know, there's other aspects that make a good moose. You know, you really want to look at everything. Like, most importantly to me when I'm looking at them is the height of the palm and the width of the palm. And then, of course, the number of points that he has. You know, I've seen 63-inch class moose that, you know, were a lot better bulls than some of the 70-inchers that we've taken over the years, just because they've got it all going for them. You know, they're really palmated. They got beautiful points and really tall, wide palms. And, you know, some of those older age class, really wide 70-inchers that I've seen have just been really scraggly, ratty looking bulls. And so don't get too caught up on spread. You know, it's important, but it's not everything. I've even had some guys, you know, I've heard of guys saying, well, I won't shoot a moose, you know, if it's 63 inches, if it's not 63 inches. Well, you know, the difference between a 60 and a 63, you know, is that much on either side, which could be just a, you know, a kicker tine. So, you know, spread isn't everything, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Look at everything when you're judging a moose.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joey. You know, I've taken the number one moose I ever took was 75 inches, but the biggest moose I've taken, I've had several over 80 inches, and they don't score even half as much as the 75. You know, that
Wow.
had, like the one in back of my head, that's 76, and
Yeah.
it scored okay, but nothing like the one that was you know, in the 70-inch class, you know, lower 70s, because I had everything: the long palms, the long width of the width of the palms, you know, the space in between the you know, the beams to the palms, you know, it had everything. Points is, you know, you get a lot of, depending on which scoring method you use. You know, like SCI, they don't deduct for any deductions, where Boone and Crockett they do, and Pope and Young, you know. So
I certainly agree with Joey that spread isn't everything. And with Sam Mass, you know, years ago we had an Austrian client. He killed a 56-inch moose. This moose, I mean, the palms and the brow tines, 5 or 6 brow tines, he was just heavy and good all the way down. He was just a very fine looking moose, only 56 inches. The really good thing about him was he was only a 3/4 size bull. His hindquarters were only 75 pounds. I'd love to breed more of those. I'd love moose that size with those kind of antlers. You know, I shoot 56 inches all day long. I don't see any more questions. Looking at a bull head on, how wide is the body of the moose? Can you use this to estimate the spread? I don't personally use that technique, so I'll let Sam or Joey speak to that.
well, what I meant by that is a lot of times you look at a mature moose, you know, he's going to be at least 30, 32, if not larger in the chest. And so I can multiply the chest of the bull times double, and you're going to have at least a 60-inch bull, you know, if anybody has a question, you know. But I emphasize that the client always trust his guide. You know, I mean, the guide has had lots of experience, a lot more experience than many of the clients that come up with us, you know. And yeah, people get caught up on 60-inch or 70-inch moose, and it's like people get caught up on a 10-foot bear, you know. Everybody wants a 10-foot bear. Well, 70-inch moose don't grow on trees, just like 10-foot bears. They're not behind every bush. So,
Yeah.
Okay, this is Thor. We're coming. We had another seminar starting here, so we're about ready to wrap this up here. Thanks to the panel and everyone for attending. Great questions, great discussion. So if there's any closing comments from the panel, otherwise we'll clear the lines here and be ready for the final presentation today.
You know, I'd just like to say one thing. I mean, moose hunting is really fun. When I started out, I used to go to some of these sports shows where they'd have a lot of turkey callers, you know, and everybody was excited about turkey hunting. I just kind of figured when they may start making 1,600-pound turkeys, that's when I'll start getting interested in turkey hunting. Moose hunting is fun.
well, my thoughts on moose, they're a lot of work. Of all the species I hunt, they're just, it's just like a lot of manpower.
Yep. But it's fun when you got something
Yeah.
wanting to come in and kick your butt. That's exciting.
Yeah, once you learn how to do it right and bring those moose to you, it's not as hard as some of the goat hunting that I've done, and it's awesome bringing a moose to you. You can't do that with most of these animals we hunt. I wish I could call sheep, but I can't. But you can sure call a moose. So
I would talk to Dan about that one.
like to hear that story.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I've been on the receiving end of some big bulls coming my way, and I can say if you haven't done it, you should do it. And you need to hunt with an experienced person that can show you the call. It takes a while to learn the calling, years. So hunting with a good guide that knows how to do it. Thanks to everyone here, and thanks for your time. And remember, this will be recorded for people to view later. And if you got time, get in contact with our, finally, just make sure all of our panel, just if you could introduce yourself, your name of your business, so that if people want to follow up and talk to you again, they know what your business name is and how to find you. And then we'll sign off.
So mine is Alaska Remote Guide Service.
Yeah, mine is Fegis Guide Service, Sam Fegis.
And I'm Aniak Jet Guide Service.
Thank you, Thor. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. And we're going to sign off. Thank you so much.